Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. It's been a while, and today we're going to try something a little bit new. I was reading with my niece the other day, and I realized, the Bible's kind of a hard read for her. And so I thought, let me do something about this. I know the Bible's a big book, but maybe we can make some progress here. So my goal is to make a Bible for children, and I know there are many out there, but one thing I particularly want to do is make the result public domain. So we're going to start with a World English Bible. And everything I use, as much as possible, I'm going to use public domain resources to make sure the result is as usable as possible. And then we're going to license the result under the CC0 license. Basically, this gets us as close as possible to public domain. There's certain countries where, like I think in the US, you can publish a work and immediately release it to the public domain. But in some countries, you can't do so voluntarily. So this is a license to kind of help get around that and to try to navigate the laws of various countries across the world to make the work that I'm authoring as widely available as possible. And I don't mind people reusing my work. It's great if they give me credit, but by releasing it in the public domain, it means that I don't have to get credit. Like I'm giving up my desire to take credit in order to get something usable. So, and if I make significant progress, or if I make it through the Bible, then I want to get it translated into other formats, like sword formats that can be widely distributed. But that's kind of a second thing. So yeah. And one of my other goals, beyond making it open source, is to use the 1,000 most common words in the English language as much as possible. I was doing some research about some educational material, and typically what's done is the 100 most used words in the language are targeted toward first graders, and the 200 most commonly used words in the language are targeted toward second graders, etc. And like the 1,000 most commonly used words is targeted toward 10th graders. The idea being, these are the words you need to be able to read really well. Yeah, and we're not going to get there right away necessarily, but there are a lot of, the nice thing about the Bible is it goes into detail about a lot of situations in life, some of which we may not think are appropriate for kids. So I want to, when I get to touchy subjects, I want to leave them ambiguous enough that the parents can explain it to their kids in an age-appropriate way. The idea here is, we're not telling the kids the whole truth. We're not lying to them, but we're gonna get them 80% of the way there, and then they can discover the truth on their own by reading, a regular Bible, one that's not adapted for children. So the goal is to get them most of the way there, and to avoid touchy subjects and conflicts and stuff. We're not going to translate the "you plow with my heifer" idiom literally. And for now, I'm going to follow this chronological order reading plan. I really like it because it gives me a really cool look at the Bible. And I don't actually have a copy of it with me here. But anyway, so I went looking around for a corpus, and I couldn't find one. So what I ended up doing was I used this tool to generate my own. And this is really cool. This is a tool provided by Ilyas Semenov. I'm pretty sure I'm saying that wrong. Wikipedia word frequency. And I used this, basically I downloaded the latest Wikipedia done for English Wikipedia, and then created a word frequency analysis document that just lists the word frequencies and sorts them by most frequent to least frequently used. And the cool thing about this is this could be adapted to other languages. I'm considering, maybe working on Swahili work from a similar perspective, because, there are lots of educational resources for English, but Swahili ones are harder for me to find. They're probably out there, written in Swahili, but I'm not very good at Swahili. So anyway, that's a long-term plan. Anyway, this is kind of where we're starting from, and, that's all nice, right? That's really fun. I'm impressed with it. The next step I really need to do is to start translating. So let's get to it. You can see here's my word list. We'll explore it a little bit. We've got the most commonly used word in English Wikipedia. That's not surprising at all. Number Setnorelnum. Is that what it's called? Nope. There it is. Okay, here we go. We got the numbers here, and you can see we got the line numbers to represent the rank of each of these numbers. Like from is the 17th most common word in English, right? And so any word like team, university, up, city, like these are all here. Up is apparently a not very common word. We are going to have to use that word though. But like I just want to be aware, like if I'm using a word, let's say we want to go to line 1500. Let's say the word murder, right? That's 1500. Now now that's pretty uncommon, right? From the perspective of a first grader, that's not a word they would necessarily know. But is there a more common word that is there a more common word we could use? Like maybe kill. That one, killed, killing, kill. Okay, yes. This one is actually less popular apparently than murder. Okay, so yeah, there's different things we can learn. And I did notice some issues here. Like, for example, we can search for one-letter words. And A, of course, that one makes sense. It's number 5. I, that's number 105. That makes sense, too. Now, you'll notice I is a little bit less common in Wikipedia because the tone of the articles there, I is not really something that is going to be used very often, right? Because the tone of a Wikipedia article is never going to be in first person or second person, right? Or, I guess, second or third person, something like that. Yeah, it's not going to be saying I or you a lot, so those are going to be less common there. But it's still pretty common, even despite the overall tone of Wikipedia. Maybe it's from quotes and stuff. But then we got words like S. That's not a word I know. That's 144. We got U, we got C. I think a lot of this is from words that were cut off, or like in the original Wikipedia, there was some markup that was dividing in the middle of a word, and so part of a word was styled one way, part of the word was styled another way, and so we just see part of it. I'm going to ignore those. I'm not going to delete them because, frankly, that'd be a lot of work. I'm going to leave them in place, and we'll just not use those because they're not real words. Anyway, so here we're using, as I said, World English Bible. Now, the ESV, English Standard Version, is actually based on World English Bible, so they agree a lot. Some of the differences are, a lot of times, World English Bible will use Yahweh instead of Lord. The Lord God, right? Yahweh God. Honestly, I think that's preferable. Like, it's his name, right? What the heck does Lord even mean? Like, back in the day, Lord meant something to people, but nowadays, like, what does Lord even mean? How common is it? Yeah, okay, it's 1086. You know, Yahweh is obviously not mentioned in the Wikipedia very often, but it is there. It is there. Okay, rank 40,000 and some change. Obviously, it has to be Wikipedia somewhere, right? And then that's the cool thing about this. Oh, Thanos is there, right? Any word I can imagine in English, any modern English word is gonna be there. Heck, I bet thine is there. Yeah, thine is there. Even older English words. So this is a really good representation of the English language. Like I will be surprised if I find a word that is real that is not in Wikipedia. So I think this is a really good, especially in connection with the Bible. Like, it's not like, the Bible's been around a while, but it's nothing new under the sun, as they say. So, I think this is a really good resource. I think that Wikipedia is a really good resource to help us get common words that children are going to need to know anyway for their normal everyday life. Obviously everyone needs to know the. It's got to be one of the first words you learn, right? And it kind of doesn't matter if the is a difficult word or an easy word. It's common, so you have to learn it, right? It's kind of like with, right? With is 4 letters long, but it's the 12th most common word. Well, you have to learn it, even though, this as might be easier, this he might be easier, by might be easier, and might be easier, right? But you still have to learn these. After, right? That's a pretty long word for a first grader. During, that's a really, complicated one. But these are the first words you need to learn if you want to gain proficiency, right? So even if these aren't the words being taught in school, they're going to be the most useful words for a young reader. Like, you'll save time by learning these words first, right? You'll be able to read more things by reading them first. So if I stick to this list and try to choose higher ranked words on this list, then I'll be doing a service to children who are struggling to read, even if I choose words that they happen to struggle with. So that's the basic idea. So yeah, and this is a difficult task. One of the hard things is going to be translating the same word the same way every time. Right now, I'm just going to wing it. I guess I'm arrogant, but yeah. So let's look at start, for example. Started is 320. Start is 376. Okay, I'm going to mark that. And let's look at begin. Beginning is 676. Okay, so beginning, believe it or not, beginning is actually more commonly used than start. So I probably should use beginning. That's surprising. In and the, I'm not going to even look up. I mean, what would I use instead of the, right? God staying is a common word anyway. The heavens. Now that's interesting. Heavens, I need to look up the original meaning. Okay, 5,000. So if I can use a different word instead of heaven, I'd be doing service to these children. Although, I might be doing them, that's arguable, right? Because they also need to learn about heaven if they want to be Christians. But let's look at the Hebrew. I've got a reference on my phone here. Unfortunately, I'm not caching it today. Shameh. Shameh. The second form being dual of an unused singular. It means to be lofty. It means the sky. So the thing is, there's a lot of stuff, especially, in ancient Hebrew, maybe in modern Hebrew, I don't really know. But from what I understand, not only in the Bible itself, but in Hebrew in general, there's a lot of symbolic language. You talk about the heavens, and you don't just mean the sky. You also mean all the spiritual stuff that's out there beyond us, right? As well as meaning the universe, right? It's symbolic. It's not literal, right? Having said that, I don't see why we can't use the word sky the same way, right? So it says, means to be lofty. It refers to the sky as aloft, the dual perhaps alluding to the visible arch in which the clouds move. In which there are clouds, as well as to the higher ether where the celestial bodies revolve. So that's the Hebrew, right? And we kind of had that connotation in English as well, frankly, probably because of translating the Bible into English. Like, that probably came from the Hebrew and we just got it from them, or I don't know, maybe even from Anglo-Saxon history for all I know. Aloft, that's 34,000. That's not a common word, although it's a fun one. Let's look at sky. That's 27. Hang on. Oopsie daisy, let's not change it. A, B, C. Sky is 27,000, or 2,700. Heaven. Yeah, okay, so sky is more common. And like I said, we're not trying to we're not trying to get like the most clear phrase in English, like the one that's most descriptive. We're trying to get something down to where the kids kind of get the right image in their mind. Because if you think about it, when you think about God creating the heavens and the earth, like there's a certain image that's supposed to show up in your mind. And then you're supposed to look at the image and think, oh yeah, it's symbolic, right? So if we can get the kids the same image, it doesn't really matter if we use the same word or not, because it's the image that's communicating. It's not the words themselves. It's the idea of where they're at. Anyway, let's look at earth. That is a pretty uncommon word. I could try ground. Dirt, which apparently is not that common. World is another one that I kind of expect to be more common. World is a better one. Yeah. World is a much better one. Now let me just double check what earth means in Hebrew. Maybe I shouldn't spend so much time on this. It's giving the same reference. I think that's a mistake in I think it's a mistake in the links between the translation and the here we go. Let's look at King James, click on Earth. Yeah, there we go. It's just a mistake in the linking between things. Okay, Eretz, from an unused root probably meaning to be firm, the earth. So I could literally just call it the firm thing. The land, right? The land. Land's another good one. 64 world. I'd say that's our winner for now. Let's mark that as A. Land. Okay, that's not the winner. Yeah. So world. And again, if these kids want to read Wikipedia at some point, they're going to have to know. If they want to read Wikipedia at some point, they're going to have to know. They're going to have to know the word world. So chapter is 22,000. Okay, so what about section? Section is a lot more common, which makes sense. I think it's more common in everyday language, too. Although books have chapters, and kids will talk about book chapters. I don't think there's a strong reason to change the word chapter, but it's something to think about. The reason I say that, if the adult is sitting down with a kid and they say, go to chapter 3, and then the kid reads section 3, it just creates extra confusion. Like, not being able to understand the word chapter is kind of the least of our concerns at that point, because now we're expecting the adults to retrain themselves. And like, you know, if you sit down to any Bible, it's going to say chapter 3, but you sit down with your kid to this special weird Bible and it says section 3, and now you look like an idiot in front of your kid. You know, you look like you didn't know what you were talking about. So I feel like that doesn't... I don't think that does me any favors to change something like that, but going at it by the numbers, like it looks like section's a better word to use there. Anyway, I don't think I should be putting verse numbers, because I think that's just going to make it harder to read. The world was... Where is was? Oh, it's number 7. Okay. Now, form. Form is 309. I could say without form. Where's without? Okay. They're really close to each other. Okay, without form, right? What about formless? See, that's way, way down there. I think that's a much harder word. But let's think about it. What is a form? Because this was always my question reading the Bible. Like, what the heck does it mean it was formless? Okay, so, without form in the King James, from an unused root meaning to lie waste, a desolation, a desert, a worthless thing. I could just say worthless. Worthless and empty. Worthless. I mean, that's not very common. Bankrupt? Desolate? Come on, think of kid words. Because formless makes it sound like, maybe that's an old word or something, maybe that's an old English definition, but like it makes it sound like it was amorphous, right? Like it didn't have a shape. Like a freaking, like maybe a ball of space dust or gases, right? I don't really know what that word means. I can't visualize it. But if you look in the original, it's just saying, oh, it was a wasteland. That makes more sense to me. Like, as a human being, like that word it connects with me more. You know? And who knows? Who knows what it really looked like from God's perspective? You know, and that's another thing too. Like, even if it was literally a desert and we called it a desert, what would God call it? What would it be in his language? You know, like, he looks at the world differently than we do. That's kind of by definition, right? So, since there wasn't a human around to record it, you know, we have to rely on God translating it from his own way of thinking into our way of thinking. And I'm not saying he's bad at that or anything, but like, I don't think he expects us to fully understand it. Like, I don't think that was a, like, hey, you have to fully understand everything I say in order for me to talk to you. That was never a requirement, right? God talked to plenty of people who were clueless about what he was saying. And he was perfectly happy to promise the cross to Abraham, even though Abraham probably didn't know about crosses. He probably wasn't, I mean, maybe he knew about it, but, you know, he just, like, Jesus wasn't part of his world, right, as far as we know. But God made him a promise in language he can understand that we now look back on and say, well, that was the message of Christ. That was the birth of Christ. He was prophesying. You know? Anyway, so Wasteland. I could just say it was bad. It was bad, right? Bad. I mean, talk me out of that one, right? Tell me a wasteland isn't bad. Empty is a pretty uncommon word, apparently. Maybe I should have just read the word list. Full is a lot more common. I mean, I'm going to go with empty for now. We're not going to overthink it. Now, darkness is one. I could just say it was dark, right? Darkness is a lot less common. Yeah. It was dark on the surface. Now, surface is a really bad word to be using. I could say top, but what is the deep? Okay, I'm going to look up some more. Okay, in World English it says surface. It says face. It says face in the King James, which honestly, it makes sense. Face makes sense, and it's a common word for little kids, but normally they're talking about the face of a person, so I don't think they'd at least be able to read it, though. So face is not a bad option. They would need someone to explain to them what it means, but they could at least read it. And they could read it and ignore the fact that they're confused, right? Like the kids have to do all the time. The deep, an abyss, a surging mass of water. So I feel like we're going out of our way to avoid saying the word ocean. Sea. Season. Sea is 532. Okay, let's look at ocean. Oh, it's actually less common. Okay. Of the sea. And God's Spirit. How common is spirit? It's not especially common. But I mean, if I don't say spirit, that's going to confuse some adults. I mean, the Hebrew literally says wind. I could say breath. How common is breath? That's going to be controversial, isn't it? But I think it's so symbolic. Okay, breath is not that common. Wind is surely common, right? Apparently it's less common than Windows. Yeah, a lot less common than Windows. Okay. Fascinating. Probably because of Microsoft Windows. Sensible or even violent exhalation. A breath, it is an exhalation. So an exhale's breath. I think we're going to go with spirit. It's not that less common than wind. Oops. 2100, 2300. Yeah, it's not that less common than wind. And it's way more common than, I may as well capitalize it, way more common than breath. God's Spirit was hovering. I got to change that one. What about hover? I also don't, yeah, that's a really uncommon word. I don't like the idea of putting two hard words in a row like that. Give the kid a chance to recover. Floating. What about float? That's a little bit more common. It's still going to be harder for the younger kids, but it's a way more common. Yeah, okay, floating. I mean, what I'm kind of learning is that this is still going to be hard for a first grader to read on their own. I guess they'll need help with it, which isn't a bad thing. To get help with it. Was floating. Now, over or above? Over is really common. Above is less. Okay. Over the face of the... Now, here it says waters. It doesn't say deep. I mean, could I use the same word here? Let's see. Let's look. Face of the deep. Deep is Tehome or something to that effect. Okay, it's a different word in Hebrew. Water, figuratively juice. I could just say water. We talked about seas, now we're talking about water. 297. Okay. Now what about waters? To be honest with you, I don't know what waters means in this context, because there's no land, right? In the story, there's no land. And it's like 2,600. Like, I don't think that S adds enough value to the story. Like, as an adult, I have trouble understanding it, other than, oh, it's talking about the Atlantic and the Pacific and the Indian Oceans, all of those combined. But they didn't exist back then. I don't know that adds clarity. In the original, though, it is a plural, so this is deviation from the Hebrew. I mean, I just think it makes more sense in English. God said. I think said's going to be a pretty common one. Okay, 216. 217. More common than water. I think let's pretty common. No, it's not apparently. Okay, let's search for it this way. Let space. Wow. Let there be light. Okay. It's not a particularly common word in Wikipedia. But it's a short word, and I do feel like kids are going to know it in the corpus of language that they're getting access to. I'm seeing that's maybe one downside of this. Yeah, these are words that kids will get a chance to read out in the wild, in the adult world, but in the protected garden, in the walled garden they live in, the books that are written for them, let is going to be far more common than what this list would suggest. But let's see, let there be light. What if I say happen? That's 3,000. Oh, 5,000. Okay, so mark A. Let. Oh, wait, we need to search for it more specifically. Mark B. Okay, let is more common, so light happen would be more confusing, I think, all around. I can't think of anything better than let. Now, how common is there? Pretty common. B, I'm not really questioning that much. I'm just curious. Yep, 27. And then light. That's pretty uncommon, actually. Is there another word I could use that would get higher on the list? I mean, I realize it's still higher on the list than some other words. Illumination, lightning. I mean, lightning contains light, so it would have already flight, slight, lights, lights, lightning. Yeah, lightning's a lot less common. Okay, so I think light's gonna be it. I mean, my little niece struggled with that word, so. And there was light. I know was is common and is common. God saw the light and saw that it was good. I'm just going to double check. Good's there. GT. Okay, let's go back there. Mark it as A. Awesome. A lot less common. Nice. This kind of gets away from the meaning a little bit, and it's less common. Okay. I probably need a thesaurus, to be honest. Let's look up one of those. Unfortunately, I don't have a license for this thesaurus to let me show it on the stream, so we're just going to use a thesaurus I can find for now. Light. Let's look up light for now. Bright. Rich. Sunny. I could... Okay, what about sunny? That's a lot less common than light. Okay. Let's look at bright. That's still less common than light. Light was where again? 585. Okay. Glow. Still less common. Those are all words that are hard for me to say. Well lit. What about lit? How common is lit? Elliptical military. Okay, so well lit. That's uncommon, but if you look at well, that's 121. What about lit? That's uncommon too. Okay. So light is better. Let's look at good. Oh yeah, the synonyms are acceptable. Excellent. Favorable. Great is a synonym for good. Okay, we have good. Great. Now, that's interesting. Great is more common than good. And I think it carries the same meaning. I could say nice. We already checked that one. Ace. Choice. I think that... Like, yes, it's a synonym. But it's going to be a complicated thing for a kid. Rad. Let's look at rad. Okay, well, it's less common than good. I'm surprised that great's more common. Let me just double check here. Okay, so apparently in the Hebrew, good as an adjective in the widest sense, used likewise as a noun, both in the masculine and the feminine. I'm going to say great. It was great. I think that's perfectly fine. Okay. Okay, great. God divided. Now that is one, okay. Divided is apparently more common than divide, but it's 1300. Separate. Now separate is more common. What about separated? Interesting, divided is more common than separated. And you know what? They're going to be using the word divide in class. This is definitely a word they're going to encounter. The word separate too. Am I going to be relying so much on this this thesaurus I can't show you guys? Oh, there we go. Split. Believe it or not, it's not really the winner. 13. Divided is more common than split. My gut tells me to go with split. The light from the dark. Let's just say dark, right? Yeah, let's just say dark. I mean, it makes sense, right? God called. Do we want to call? Okay. Called. 149. What about named? Name. See, name is more common than, well, is it? Call. Yeah. Name is more common than call, or called. But named is less common than called. Named is down here at A, B. A. Named. B. Oops. Gotta search for it again. Mark B. Name. Mark C. So 126, 149, 126, 149, right there, and then 179. I think named communicates better to a kid in American English. I honestly do. I think that it might be slightly harder to read than called, but once they read it, they're going to know what it means. That's just my impression. That's my intuition. I guess I need some more resources to try to vet that, but here we go. This is how we're doing right now. He named the light day. I guess I can't really change those names, can I? Day is pretty common, 188. Night, 588. And he named the dark night. Okay. Well, what about picked? Well, that's not that common at all. Pick is also not common. Okay. Okay. Great. There was evening and there was morning. Now, evening is less common than night. So I think I might just say night. Bedtime? There was bedtime and there was morning. I think that would work. Wake. It was bedtime and then school time. Yeah, that would probably work. Evening, night, twilight. Which evidently is a very uncommon word. I mean, apparently gyromancy is more common than twilight. Did I misspell it? I think I probably did. Oh, but twilight's pretty common, actually, because of, popular culture. I mean, not necessarily in Wikipedia, but... No? Okay, so I did misspell twilight. Okay. Floral is more common than twilight. Brazil is more common than twilight. Bundle, which is not so bad. Chronological is more common. Undercover, but then again, cart, which you see in stories all the time, is less common than twilight. Potatoes, Welch. I mean, these are all fairly common. I mean, Albuquerque, and maybe not. Crowry. Right. These are all pretty common words, right? Not that one. Uruguayan. I don't think I've ever seen that word. And apparently it's more common than twilight in Wikipedia. I might have an impartial list. I don't know. I don't know why it's so uncommon. But evening is more common. Than that. Okay, we're not going to overthink it. Morning is a lot more common. Okay, how common is first? Pretty common. Days less common, but they're going to be using that anyway. Okay, I think that's pretty good. God said, "Let there be an expanse." Okay, that is not a word I want to put in this adaptation. I certainly am not going to call it firmament, though. A visible arch of the skyway. what if I said arch? Well, let's just okay. Firmament. Let's just get, for comparison's sake, this is 80,000. Expanse. Okay, that's 30,000. Arch. Starting with arch. Okay, arch itself is 5,000. Now, one nice thing about arch is it's in the word march, which is on our list. So I think, yeah, let there be an arch in that. Now, should we say middle? Should we say center? 645. Center's a lot more common than middle, at least in Wikipedia. Middle is a word that I think kids are going to use more frequently. So maybe maybe I need a different corpus, unfortunately. In between. That's really common. In between. Yes. The water. Kind of doesn't make sense. I could put waters, and it would make more sense. I noticed, though, my niece will skip, at her skill level, she will skip S's on the end of sentences. She'll just not even say them. So for her, that wouldn't mean much. The difference wouldn't mean much. So I could put an S there, and she wouldn't notice, and she'd be fine. I can't say in the midst of. Amidst. I think we're getting further from the answer here. In between the waters. And let it, now do I want to say divide or separate? Divide. Okay, 70,000. Separate. Separate. We're going to use separate. Even though we used divide earlier. I don't know. We'll have to think this through. And let it separate the waters from the waters. I don't even understand that. Like, to this day, I don't understand this phrase. Like, I get it, but I don't get it. Okay, that is a plural there. I'm not going to question it. We're just going to leave it. From is common, I'm sure, right? It's very common. God made the arch and separated. See, I have to use the same word throughout, I think. Split. I used split before. I'm going to use split here. Just following my gut. And split the water from the water. We're going to use singular here. Okay, now we're under is 81. I think we're going to go with that one. The water under the arch from the water over the arch. Which were under the expanse and the waters which were above the expanse. Yeah, I think that communicates. I don't want to use semicolons here. And it was so. God called, did I say named earlier? I did. Named the arch sky. Now see, we used the word sky before to refer to the waters above the arch. So we're kind of changing the meaning here a little bit. But yeah. Interesting, they put the quote outside of they put the period outside the quote. There was evening and, wait, how did I say it here? Same way. And there was morning. Now here it says the first day, and here it says a second day. How does it deal with the third day? A third day. I mean, I don't get the idea. I get that the first day is more prominent, but by the same token, the second day would be prominent in reference to the first day. Now, is that because they were trying to translate the original more accurately than King James? I mean, I may as well say another day instead of a second day. Well, let's see. Another is 214. Second is 86. Second's more common, so let's go with that. Third, 228. And also, I could only get away with another day for the second one, I think. Or maybe the 8th day. You know, the one nobody counts to. Right, so how is it in King James? Face of the water, first day is verse 5. Evening and morning were the first day. And then we want to look at verse 8. Verses are really convenient for adults, though, I'll tell you that. Were the second day. Okay, so let's try with this. Second. Okay, let's look at first. You know what? I don't think the Hebrew really specifies an article there, at least from what I'm seeing in my notes, or what I'm looking at in my reference. So I'm going to say the second day and be consistent. It's weird to me that it's inconsistent here. It's really hard for me to think that in the first chapter of the Bible they made that kind of mistake. Like, I feel like every single individual involved with the translation project probably reviewed this line of text. So it had to have been an intentional decision. Maybe they wrote notes about it somewhere when they did the translation, but I don't know. I just don't agree with them. God said, "Let the water under the sky be gathered." Okay, gathered is more common than gather, but it's not very common. What about brought? See, that's a lot more common. I could say be brought together, right? Yeah, gathered and brought mean the same thing. Massed. I mean, that's a shorter word, but amassed. I like that word, honestly. That's what I would use if I were making a personal translation. I'll say brought. Now, together is common, right? Yeah, pretty common. Be brought together. Do I want to say to or into? To is really common. That doesn't mean into is invalid, though. It's still 48 on the list. It would be in the first 100 words, so by Fry's logic, that would make it first grade word. But it's not going into a container. I think that's why it's... Now, what about place? Place, 169. Spot, a lot less common. Locale. I'm just trying to think. Place, spot, room. Now that's interesting. Oops. Room is less common. I think for a kid, though, room they're going to see more often than place. Not that room is a good translation. Okay. And let the dry land appear. Let's confirm my instincts. Dry is not very common. I mean, wet is not either. Okay. Land. Okay, 321. Dirt. No. Soil. No. Land is better. I feel like there's gotta be a more common word, though. Oh, I want to look up for gather. Let's look up, brought. And then what about, piled? Compiled? That's not that common. Okay. I love how piled and compiled basically mean the same thing. More or less. If you squint. Yeah, I guess what I didn't realize until I started is basically this entire process is looking up words in a thesaurus and trying to pick the most common one. I bet I could automate that task, to be honest with you. I could just take every word individually in the sentence and pass it through a computer tool to look up all the definitions, look up all the different synonyms, and figure out which one's the most common. Or which several are most common, and let me pick one. Yeah. And let the dry land appear. That's 450. Well, even appear itself is like low. At best 450. We'll just go from that one. Maybe I should go from not from the root word, but from any form of that word, like whichever one's the most common. Maybe that's where I should go from, right? So that would justify getting name over called, for example. Maybe that's what I should do. Okay, appear. 450 appeared. Rise is not necessarily a great translation, and it's also a lot less common. Oops. So let's not consider it. Break out? No. Out's obviously pretty common, though. Man, this is harder than I thought it was. Come. I feel like that word's a lot more common than Wikipedia is letting on. Or I could say show up. I like that. Let the dry land show up. I think that's good. And it was so. $95, okay. God named the dry land. Do I want to call it Earth or World? I think it's hard to argue with this because we don't live. Well, we live on the world. We live on the Earth. Yeah. And the And the water that was brought together he named seas. God saw that it was... Did I say good earlier? Great. I did, didn't I? Oh, no. Great. Let's look here. Good. Only appears a couple times here. Okay. Can I highlight all of them? Find all? Find all? Perfect. Alright. God saw that it was great. God said, let the... See now, it's earth, right? Is he going to call it earth or is he going to call it ground? 1429. He's going to call it ground. He called the dry land ground. Let the ground... I mean, ground makes so much more sense at this age. What the heck is earth? Let the ground yield. Okay, well, we're going to go ahead and look at yield. Yeah, 69,000. I thought so. We need a different word for that. Grow. Let's just call it grow. Let the ground grow grass. Now, do I need a different word for that? Plants. Apparently is more common. But I mean, people see grass all the time in their lives, so... Speaking of, it probably means something different nowadays than it did then. So maybe I need to check the Hebrew. Bring forth grass. A sprout. So sprouts. Herbs. Sprout is a lot less common than grass, so we're going to go with grass. Herbs. Now let's look up herb. It literally means grass. Or green things. Green things. Let's just go with that. Green things. How common is thing? Okay, 1635. Stuff. Less common. Thing, stuff. One. Green ones. I think that's a little bit less descriptive. Green things. Green things. Making. How about making? Let the ground grow grass. Green things making seeds. Well, let's see. Let's just check the Hebrew. I want to kind of see if there's the earth is going to bring forth grass. Dashal. Herbs yielding seeds. Zaral. That's actually a different word in the Hebrew. Okay, so they use the word yield for both of those. Fruit tree yielding. Also, each of them is different. Every single one of them is different. So, let the earth yield grass. Dashal means to sprout. Let the earth bring forth sprouts. Herbs yielding, or sowing, right? Okay. And then fruit trees yielding fruit, that was, asal, which means to do or to make in the broadest sense. So they didn't have a specialized word for it. So making is actually pretty appropriate. Seeds. It's pretty, not that common. Huh. Well, what else am I going to say, though? And fruit trees making, I could say growing, make, grow. Yeah, I think make is better. Making fruit. Making seeds. I could say making seeds just like them. And fruit trees making fruit just like them. Oh. Making fruit with seeds inside just like them. Just like the trees. Okay. Let the earth yield grass, herbs yielding seed, and fruit trees bearing fruit after their kind, with their seeds in it, on the earth. All on the earth, on the ground. I feel like that's a repetition there, but it is. It's in the original, and I don't really know. Yeah, okay. It's kind of say the ground to the ground. Anyway, whatever. And it was so. The earth grew grass, green things, making seeds just like them, and trees making fruit with seeds inside them, just like them. And God saw that it was great. There was evening, and there was morning, the third day. Okay, in some sense I'm getting faster at this, but in another sense, that was a really complicated one. Let's see, how long has the stream been? An hour. Okay, let's look at this. We spent an hour on this. We've gotten through 13 verses. How many do we have total? Okay, it's hard to see. Let's see. Do I even have chapters here? No. Show all. Sorry, I asked. 31, 10, 4, 2, 2. This must be chapter 2. What that must be. Yep, chapter 2, verse 1. Okay. So we have 31 verses here. We know what to look for now. And then we have 25, so let's do simple math. 31 plus 25 plus 24. 80. Okay, and I'm doing 13 per hour, so divide by 13. That takes 6 hours to do 3 chapters of the Bible. Let's ask ChatGPT about this. How many verses are in the Bible? There are obviously various different lengths, but yeah, King James, sure, that's close enough. 31,000. Okay. So 31,000 divided by 13, 2,000 hours divided by, let's say, 8-hour days, 300 days. Times 8, let's just say 40 hours a week, 59 weeks, so about a year. That's how long it would take if I continue at this rate. Which, honestly, doesn't sound so bad when I put it that way. That's quicker than some people read the Bible, so that's not horrible, I guess. It would be nice, though, if I went faster next time, so that's a goal. Anyway, that's about all I have time for today. Thank you all for joining me. I guess we'll come back next time. Bye-bye now.